Welcome to the Art of Intelligence, where we decode the future of AI, one story, one use case, and one bold idea at a time. I'm your host, Barlas UJ, inviting you to join me and industry leaders as we explore how artificial intelligence is reshaping our world, from the boardroom to the classroom and beyond. Whether you're an innovator, a skeptic, or just AI curious, this is your front row seat to the real conversations and practical insights behind the buzzwords. Let's paint the bigger picture together.
All right, I am fired up today about this conversation. I'm joining with Mike Reed, polymath, storyteller, co-founder, chief operating officer at Realis Solutions Group. Is that Realis or Realis?
Realis. It's actually a literary term for the thing that is real in a story.
I love it. So coming to us from Austin, Texas area with deep roots in the Houston tech scene, we have Mike's career has taken him from AWS, where I found him, to now co-founding a boutique firm that's tackling one of the most critical challenges in business today, which is navigating AI, emerging technologies, and enterprise risk at the intersection where innovation meets real world business impact. Now, what makes this conversation exciting is Mike's unique ability to translate vision into execution. He's the guy building the systems, closing the first clients, cutting through the AI noise to help C-suite leaders implement strategies that actually move the needle. From his time at AWS to launching Realis Solutions, he's seen this pace evolve every angle, and there's a ton we can learn from him today. He's actively building it, and he's the guy to ask the questions. Mike, great to have you. Let's dive in.
Yeah, Barlas, great to be back. You know, we've known each other for a couple of years, and we've been in and out of each other's stories. But this is one of those times when there's something new to talk about.
Absolutely. You know, AI has been moving things crazy for the last couple of years. It feels like there's no conversation but AI. But before we get into the conversation, we have a couple questions that we ask every one of people here. Today, I'm going to try a new question out on you. And the question is, if you could be or pick out any pizza topping on the planet and put it on a pizza, what would it be?
That's easy. I am pineapple. I am the thing you either love or hate and stirs the pot in the middle of the discussion.
Wow, I love it. I love the pineapple reference. That is pretty sweet. I personally am, a Canadian, so I love Canadian bacon, which is basically just, tenderloin sliced up. So I love Canadian bacon mixed with pineapple, which I know a lot of you are going to hate me out here for that, but it is pretty much fantastic, which is the same analogy I will use of Mike, which is I can't get enough. Mike is always fantastic. He's a great conversationalist, always in a good mood, always happy to help. So, Mike, can you do me a favor? Can you go ahead and give us a background on Mike? Like, can you tell us about Little Mike? Like, what brought Little Mike into technology and go from there?
Yeah, I can. So little Mike was the guy at 8 years old with a screwdriver taking apart his mom's vacuum cleaner to find out how everything worked and where the wiring ran and how the switch worked and how the motor worked. Always curious and usually able to get it put back together. Sometimes that became a little more urgent, but yeah, always the one with chemistry sets or Tinker Toys. You know, always creating. I'm very much a learn with my hands, learn by doing kind of person. I actually was, to nobody's surprise, part of talented and gifted programs in school. But one of the things to know is I can be very verbose to the point that the penalty for turning in essays late was having to add 500 additional words if you were late for the same score. I would intentionally be late so that I could write more.
Oh, one of those.
Exactly, one of those, which wasn't necessarily a good fit for some of the culture at AWS around being, not using flowery language, not being very verbose, but yeah, always wanted to be expressive, and that carried through. At the age of 16, I was admitted to the Texas Academy of Math and Science. That's a 2-year early admissions program at the University of North Texas. So if you can imagine the fun of having 200 16-year-olds in a dorm on a 4-year university, going to classes with everybody else, and typically breaking the curve in those classes, that started my career. My father was a firefighter paramedic. So I always had public safety in my background as well. And I've seen those continue. So the mission of serving, the emotional intelligence and curiosity, and then the support to go figure out what to do next. And that's translated into career, Mike, in terms of emerging technologies and new things.
And paramedics, let's not forget.
Yeah. Just left in January, 30 years as a paramedic, spent my last 15 on the north side of Houston, and for 10 years was actually a paramedic for the Houston Texans.
Wow.
Getting to stand on the field and watch football wasn't a bad gig.
Yeah, I'm sorry I never got to take advantage of you for that and be able to come down and hang out. That would have been fantastic when I was a Houston guy. Tell me a little bit more about your time at AWS. I know that's where we met, and can you give us a little bit of example so we can have your bona fides before we get into this conversation?
Yeah, I think AWS was another drumbeat in career progression. So if I go all the way back before AWS, I was at Microsoft and I was the youngest consultant ever hired as part of Microsoft Consulting Services at the time of Active Directory and Exchange becoming a thing. So this would be the late 90s, early 2000s. Got involved with directory services. Active Directory was actually the second person at Microsoft to ever present publicly on Active Directory. And that came about because the first one was an overflow session and the speaker had to leave. So I took his notes and repeated the session for overflows, launched Active Directory, launched Exchange. I should probably give an apology. I'm personally responsible for about 500,000 seats of Active Directory. So if you're managing AD, I'm sorry. That moved forward through some tech startups, moving from Apple Care Engineering and launching the iPhone into Mac integration into the enterprise and building some
Like
support
Forrest Gump.
tools there, all the way forward to Security World, working at SecureWorks, helping launch one of the first cloud-based MDR products. And that is where I got involved with AWS as an alliance lead, getting us in the marketplace. That got the attention of AWS. And I came into AWS out of SecureWorks to run the network security segment in AWS Marketplace. So this would have been around the time that folks like Zscaler, Fortinet, Netscope were really the hot thing in terms of network security and some of the things that were happening from prior generation to next generation technology. As you know, while I was at AWS, they merged Marketplace and APN together.
Hmm.
As part of that merger, I went from network security and Marketplace to managed security ISVs in general. So spent a good portion of time managing any company who was building a managed security tool for other people to use to manage security fell somewhere in my remit at AWS, and that got me back into the partner side.
But that's a storied career from up to that point, and there's more to add on top of that. Like I said, you're like the Forrest Gump of technology, where you know how Forrest touches all these historical dates, and you know you see him one day with the president, then a different president, then a different president,
Right.
Elvis Presley, and all that. You're like that guy. You're like a savant going from Microsoft to Apple to SecureWorks to AWS. Now, you've gone from AWS, one of the biggest cloud players on the planet, to co-founding Realis Solutions Group. What was the aha moment that made you realize AI and emerging tech needed a different kind of consulting approach?
Yeah. So at AWS, as part of the MSSP ISV initiative, the managed software security, I had a chance to work with some folks from AWS Professional Services and WWSO, who's now ASP, Amazon Services and Partners. There was a large cyber insurance company that had purchased a red team and wanted to figure out how to productize the red team functions that they had built. So we delivered a workshop, created and delivered a workshop together from ProServe, from WWSO, and from the MSSP ISV perspective of what would good security products look like from a red team. That interaction really brought the three of us together in terms of, hey, we have a customer problem we can solve, and it's not necessarily about technology. It's about how do you solve a customer problem. That was essentially a one and done engagement. Fast forward, there's 2+ years here that I left AWS to go to Fortra. Fortra was one of the managed security ISVs in my patch, and they were embarking on a platformization journey. I've been through that in my career. I've seen the effect of building a platform, building the APIs, building out the partner ecosystem that supports it. That was at Mobile Iron in the launch of mobile security. I knew that dance. I also knew, I've been through IPOs as a Series B hire all the way through to successful IPO. So I spent time at Fortra managing our large global partner relationships as well as building our AI security story. I self-nominated and was accepted as a field CISO at Fortra, focused on cybersecurity and AI. So security of AI, security for AI, and security with AI, and then do a degree security against AI, and really saw an opportunity in crafting that message to get back to my roots. I have a master of science in management and leadership. I focus on team development dynamics, what makes teams successful. Saw that the technology wasn't necessarily the problem. Everybody wants to go play with LLMs. Everybody wants to play with Claude. From a security perspective, there are technical solutions to secure applications, data, edge, network. But what there wasn't is a way to talk to the business about how to qualify, quantify, and discuss risk. And okay, I can talk about this from a security perspective, but from a business perspective, what happens if AI doesn't work? But more importantly, what happens when it does? What's the risk of my business of going faster? Am I ready to go fast? Am I
The Oprah
optimized
effect.
that way? So my co-founder Emily and Emily was also from AWS. She's a data science and AI person. She left in 2025 and founded Advanced Threat Intelligence Group. I left Fortra in March, joined her, and we rebranded and relaunched as Realis. So we're trying to solve the business problem of what risk do I have, what's acceptable, and what does it get me in return? And that's really the big piece is, do I get something out of the investment I'm making, whether it's tokens, people, tools, what is it? How do I use AI successfully, and am I ready for that success?
That's a great answer to that question, which follows up to the next question that I have. A lot of executives have AI on the brain, C level, CEO, CIO, CTO, COO. When you're talking to these folks, how do you cut through the noise and identify which AI use case will actually move the needle for their business?
I think there's two interesting answers here. The first is the AWS person in me. Let's start with the customer. What's going to happen to the customer's experience when they use AI? The in joke is, if your first AI project is to build a call center agent that can take inbound phone calls, your first use case test should be representative. Representative?
Hmm.
What happens when somebody doesn't want to interact with AI and ask for a representative? Looking at the customer and saying, okay, can I make the customer's experience better? And if I do, is that going to incent them to either not leave, so reduce churn if that's what I'm looking for, buy more, or keep buying the same thing they have, and expanding that? Is it going to generate new opportunities? Is it going to protect my customer relationship? And then the other piece of that is, let's say I build that call center agent. Am I also doing the things I need to do for my existing human agents to train them on, here's what the call center agent's doing. Here's how to access the information it gave this customer if something gets escalated to you. Here's how to review this to make sure that it went the right way, and not just say, I'm going to fire my entire call center, because you're firing people who, as part of their job, have figured out how to interact with your customers. And if you lose that knowledge, you might see gains now in terms of fiscal performance from using AI. But a year from now, when you don't have the people that understood your customers anymore, AI becomes a sour note. It's not a replacement, it's an augmentation. And a lot of executives are getting pushed by their boards, they're getting pushed by their customers. Give me AI, build in AI. AI by itself doesn't fit unless you make the rest of the organizational changes you need to keep that customer focus, and frankly, to keep that knowledge that your people have in house.
Yeah. I definitely hear what you're saying and agree with everything that you're saying. AI is not a replacement; it is an augmentation. Unless you're refusing to upgrade your knowledge to be able to integrate AI into your process, then it can be a replacement. One of the things that you've talked to me about has been AI adoption using like a legal counsel specifically to understand threats. Can you walk me through that a little bit?
Yeah. So without pitching you,
Mhm.
our tagline is from the boardroom to the courtroom,
You can pitch
and
me
I can
because
walk you
I
through.
actually think it's a wonderful idea. And I know that the counselors that watch my show would appreciate what you're about to say. So please pitch away.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with, we are not attorneys. We don't provide legal advice. we do provide advisory services to companies as part of where are you trying to go? How do you get there? How can we help accelerate that? One of the places that we've seen a real strong opportunity is with corporate legal teams, and not just in terms of, hey, something's wrong or, catalog all the risks. Legal teams don't necessarily have the same focus on learning AI that the rest of the business does. So being subject matter experts to legal, and my partner Emily, her background enables her to be qualified all the way up through expert witness and testify in a courtroom
Whoa.
under corporate counsel, under other counsel. But we look to deliver advice and plans and work with companies in their all emerging technology journey, AI, post quantum, whatever it happens to be, from the point of view of what we deliver with you is defensible. So it's not just here's a solution, here's your risks, here's your mitigations. It's the things that you're doing. We're also building why we did this way, so it's defensible, and then being able to explain that to legal. And we've seen really strong uptake from legal teams and even outside counsel, general firms. Hey, could you develop custom continuing education or custom training for legal? One of the things right now, there's not a real strong audit framework for AI. There's all kinds of different security frameworks. There's things like MITRE Atlas, which may or may not have the effect that are needed. We're seeing these start to develop. So legal teams are often in limbo, having to figure out, do I choose an existing standard and hope it's good enough? Does good faith effort get me enough? Or are there things that if I understood about how AI worked and how it interacted with my data, how I stay compliant with everything else, that we could go through? And the other piece is, well, a lot of times legal's only involvement is, hey, redline this contract for me. I'm going to sign up with Anthropic or OpenAI or Perplexity or somebody like that. Redline this contract and tell me what I am and I'm not getting. Legal can have a whole lot more value in terms of, if we change this customer experience, here's what may or may not be in play. I mean, we've all heard the silly stories about the chatbots that sell cars for $1. That's one kind of legal exposure, but that's covered by insurance. Your E&O insurance typically covers, oops, I sold cars too low. But legal, really getting an understanding of the tools, the approach, we're finding that they're often one of our strongest advocates for an ongoing presence throughout a company's decision where and how to adopt AI.
I'm so excited that there is a dashboard that you're creating that will help the legal team understand hotspots of what is going to save a company and what is just fluff. I'm really glad that we're having this conversation because a lot of times AI is, like you said, chatbot for customer service. And if that's all you think AI is good for, you've already lost. And being able to have a dashboard, like you said, you're not the legal expert, although sounds like Emily is pretty far along when it comes to stuff like that. But you're not giving legal advice. What you're doing is you're taking data from a company and you're saying, here is your exposure to legal issues that you should look at. Not that this is how you fix it, but here is your heat map of where is an issue. And I think that's a really great use case when it comes to how to get AI in front of the CEO and be able to mitigate risk. And your dashboard offers personalized strategic views for legal counsel and real-time updates. How are you using the AI to surface the right information at the right time? And what kind of data are the legal teams monitoring that they couldn't easily track before?
Luxury single source reserve honey using AI. All begins with the land. An AI hive, robotic, completely autonomous, alive, moves in. And nature does the rest. Single sourced reserve honey, yours alone. A source of pride for your family and company. 1,600 honey bottles with your family or company branding for your friends and customers. And the planet gets just a little bit better. Powered by AI, harvested by nature.
Yeah, so I'll step back. Our approach has been services-led product. Let's go deliver services. Let's interact with our customers to help their customers. And the things we do more than once, we automate. those collection of automations eventually become a product. So we don't have a product on the market. We're ideating product as we go along and as we identify concerns. But starting with legal, I'll go ahead and share. One of the first things legal wants to know is, hey, what is in my environment? And ignore some of the terminology and phraseology here. I'm not a big fan of, hey, what you need is another dashboard. A dashboard doesn't solve a problem. A dashboard is a starting point, but giving legal the ability to look at and understand from a risk perspective, hey, how many different things are we using? What is our average risk score? How many users in the company are using it? How often are they using it? And when we talk about this, we're talking about it in terms of assets. Hey, what's in my environment? This could be an AI tool. It could be a data source. It could be a data analytics platform. It could be a developer tool. So going out and identifying what's in use in an environment. And then for each individual tool, being able to go in and let legal give clearance. Hey, this isn't cleared for use. This has limited clearance, moderate clearance, cleared. We're thinking through, how does legal want to say, okay, we can start using this. What are the risks and trends? This one doesn't have any recent data in it. Here's one, companies using Databricks. They see 10 unique users and 350 events. So you can see who the users are, what the usage log is. Right now, we're abstracting all of the user IDs in our platform so that we're not ingesting PII, so that there's not one more place that data is sprawling to. But also being able to ingest some of that information from the company, to be able to assure legal, hey, we're watching in the browser, we're watching across the network, we're watching at the identity layer, or we're letting dev teams register their own tools to make sure that that we're able to give visibility so that people can analyze, hey, what is my exposure? What is my risk? Where do I need to double tap and have legal ask more questions about what's being used so that legal can be consultative instead of reactive? And then as Realis, we'd like to be, our history as ATIG, Advanced Threat Intelligence Group, we'd like to be building and selling as a service, essentially risk intelligence around different AI tools and platforms. And so this would be, part of a SaaS subscription would likely be that kind of intelligence. And so, then being clear and transparent about how we do our rankings and how we do our scorings and what weighs in. Maybe this is something that ends up being customized. But as we talk to legal teams and as we go back to just, the base question of, do you have a good sense for the risk that your enterprise is undertaking? That answer is often no. And we think there's a problem to be solved there, not because the tool solves the problem, but because the tool gives legal the ability to identify problems before they happen. And perhaps there's a variant of this for a CIO. Perhaps there's a variant for a CFO. The dashboard isn't the solution. The visibility is the solution.
Love it. Get that experience of being able to see things from far off and having a better visualization of understanding of risk is an easier way to make decisions fast. So I love it. All right. Sweet. So thank you for that answer. I have a follow-up question, which is a little bit to risk. Risk management is essential to what you do at Realis. When companies start deploying the AI, especially in sensitive areas like the legal that we were just talking about, what are the top 3 risks you see as leaders underestimating when it comes to AI?
So top three, I think the first one that everybody thinks about, and thanks to NVIDIA for shocking every CFO out there. The first one is the risk of cost. How much is it going to cost me in terms of either training and upskilling people, buying subscriptions, buying tokens, doing deployments, getting the right architecture? What am I going to use natively? What am I going to use through things like AWS Bedrock? So cost is certainly the biggest risk, but cost in and of itself isn't a risk if you can get a return. So going back and looking at what is the return that I'm getting in exchange for some new thing that I'm doing with AI or making something better. And that could be new sales because I'm able to deliver new features that a customer needs. It could be better operational efficiency because people are able to do things and AI is able to do things faster or ahead of people. Or it could be simply reducing churn. Hey, I'm keeping up with the market. And we talk about this in terms of risk versus velocity. For a modern organization that's profitable and has existing customers, on a scale of 0 to 10, they've got to pick a risk posture, and that's going to limit their velocity. But they're looking over their shoulders for that startup that's willing to have velocity 10 because they literally have nothing to lose. They're not profitable. They're working on borrowed money. They can take risk 10. And then as they build products and get them launched in the market, they've got to bring that risk down, protecting data, protecting access, protecting reputation, but that risk versus velocity is really big. So that kind of goes to the next piece is okay, I understand how much money I may or may not be willing to commit to a given project, and I can do your typical MBA business case on what a return for that project looks like. No different than if I'm in manufacturing, if I want to build a new manufacturing plant, how much does it cost? What happens if I don't have the demand? If the machines go idle, there's time there. Do I have the people? On the CIO and CISO side, you're thinking about what data am I going to expose? How am I going to expose it? How do I protect it? How do I know what's accessing it? How do I meet all of the regulatory requirements I have around that data, whether it's, California's privacy or Europe's GDPR or FERPA if you're in the educational space, HIPAA. So finance, data, and then the one that we think everybody misses that we see most is what is the risk of going the wrong direction? And this is where we talk about C-levels, especially CEOs and the board having the same strategy. Boards having an idea of we want you to adopt AI and here's how we want to see this happening because we need you to remain competitive in the market versus your competitors. But executives who can come with clarity and say this is our plan for how to adopt it because, or this is our plan for what we're going to do and not going to do because, or even bring things to the board of we could go faster if we take more risk, or we could go faster if we do something to mitigate more risk. A lot of this executive clarity is what's keeping CEOs and COOs up at night in terms of what is my board going to ask me to do next and what am I actually ready to do as an organization. And then what are the rest of the impacts? Is HR at the table? I've made the point in the past, I think HR should be a part of every AI conversation because they already know how to define a task and define a job and set a level and set limits and do onboarding and handle promotions and handle firings. AI already does all of the things you need to do to manage agentic AI in your enterprise. They just do it on paper. So why not take some of that expertise and bring it into the rest of those meetings and then turn around and say, okay, what's it going to be like when our staff are no longer managing completely human teams? When you're managing people and agents or people
Hmm.
using agents. A CFO's nightmare is a
Int-
manager setting a metric of, hey, you need to use whoever uses the most tokens is the best employee. That's a bad metric. You'll get people doing things with AI that doesn't need AI just to solve the deadlines. It's all the rest of the non-technical, what happens when I do this is what companies are overlooking. And that's where we see the majority of the stumbling blocks. It's not bad code. It's not bad developers. It's not bad data security. It's the organization isn't ready to say, we can do this.
I love it. I love the two concepts that you just threw out there. And I might have to name this podcast after it. One of them being executive understanding of where AI should be for their business and understanding what your business really is, I think is so hard for executives to really even understand. When you ask somebody who's in, book manufacturing, is that what they're doing or are they, dispelling information? Like it's so complicated, but so beautiful at the same time. But I think the second part of what you said was so interesting. Should we treat AI like an employee? Should we interview AI like an employee? Should when putting AI together, should HR help do the training on which AI? Should they have that type of experience? Like it opens up so many possibilities, mind-blowing possibilities of, all right, HR should be there to understand the power of AI, limit the power of AI, limit the information AI has access to, and then who it's going to be disseminated to. Like HR already knows these rules. Like I think that
Right.
it's a brilliant idea.
And they need to be on top of it in terms of what is the impact on people. If you really are human relations, or some companies are even saying people experience now, if that really is your focus, well, you need AI expertise because you need to understand what's going to change about someone's role and potentially even their satisfaction in that role, and what do we need to bring to the table to help make them successful, whether they're an employee using a new AI tool, or a manager, they're managing employees using AI tools, or co-managing AI and people. There's a real there's a real opportunity here for HR to step into the gap and be the expert on people that they're supposed to be.
Else. I think this is a real opportunity, like you said, for HR to step up to the plate and go, look, no, you guys are using AI. This could open up risk for us. It's not just the lawyers that are going to help you. Our understanding of the world on how to train people to use AI, people not feeling like their jobs are going out the door because of AI, and then leaders using AI as that next employee as well. What output can I offset to that?
Right.
And how is that going to integrate with the rest of my employees to make us better? I think that's a big time HR question. So I think that's going to be coming up here in the next couple of weeks. I'll find an HR person. If anyone listening knows of a HR leader that is integral and integrated into AI, I'd love to get him on this call.
Hey, Carlos, real quick, one of the most fun things that we do, that we deliver, we have a service for quarterly board briefings
Mm,
to work with companies and executives at companies to help identify things that are happening in the market and make sure that they're meeting the likely concerns of their boards. So we'll come in and do collaborative work on their board presentation or their board slides, whether that's a CISO who's got 15 minutes, or a CEO who's setting strategy. And we're seeing really strong uptake in just getting those briefings typically a month before the board meeting, and then doing that work collaboratively to build those slides. But yeah, a good example here that relates to HR. A bad board slide is, we sent 200 people to a conference, got 50 people certified, and 500 people watched a webinar on AI. Great. But what is that actually doing in terms of my business metrics? Why did we send them? What are we getting out of that? And worse, those 50 people that we got certified, if we expect them to do more because of AI, are we compensating them so that we didn't train them to go work for our competitors because they pay more?
mm.
It's those downstream effects you've got to look at. So, just quarterly touch points for boards can be a really, can take a lot of the pressure off of an executive.
I think that's going to be a nice little soundbite for one of our commercials for this podcast. So fantastic. I've loved everything that you've talked about, but we do have to go to the point of this episode, or all my episodes, which is AI use cases, something that's unique, something that can help humanity, something that people find interesting. And I would love to hear something that you have that you've either seen, created, or look forward to seeing in the future of an AI use case. Floor is yours, my man.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go back to some of the earliest general market conversations we had with potential customers, and we found really good uptake in healthcare life sciences, especially pharmaceutical development. There's a big push right now on generating new drugs and new patents. There are new processes with the FDA for getting things approved, conditional approvals. There's all of these different things where a lot of different organizations are generating data. There's the drug manufacturer, there's the clinical research laboratory, there's the marketing company figuring out the name and marketing, there's the legal product and safety folks, all of them generating this data together. And there are organizations developed to the product development of pharmaceuticals that are inclusive. So we joke about chatbots, but one of the things that we heard over and over is, if I could get AI to pull out the relevant data points from each of those data sets, from the lab that's building it, the lab that's testing it, the marketing team, the legal team, if I could get that together and have AI start the conversation across the wall before a human had a chance to go through and review it all. That would be really helpful. So clinical research has been seeing this kind of a trend. Here's the kinds of things we may have to put in marketing, or legal is concerned about using this word. Can we describe it some other way? If AI can be doing systematic reviews of all of the data that's coming in as it's coming in and identifying, hey, this is likely relevant to this other group, and starting a conversation, whether that's in a quote unquote chat bot or whether it's in your existing Microsoft Teams, Slack, whatever it happens to be, that using AI to start human conversations and prompt them with the data they need for context is something that a lot of organizations are seeing as something that could reduce their friction for getting a new product to market. And that probably has relevance across anybody who's developing a new product of any kind, but especially in a regulated space, being able to point out, hey, here's a regulatory issue. Make sure everybody that needs to sign off is aware.
Well, I think that would work in a lot of different things. Like, we've worked in partners before, AWS partners, which is where you met me, and then Caddyshack, of course, after that. But there's so much that goes into project management that is repeatable.
Right.
So having something like this where an AWS partner can log in and say, before you can move forward, you have to get this certification. Before that happens, you have to have 8 deals that are put through Salesforce into Marketplace and have to be verified that are real. Like, all of that could be created through AI as an agent and could help companies so much better. I really hope someone uses that and creates that to make that happen. Maybe you can do that, Mike, and build that out and turn it into AWS partners application. That would be a great idea.
I think there's already somebody that's done that. There's some solutions in the market for that. But now, from an opportunity perspective, we want to stay focused. There's a lot of really cool products that are being built, and there's probably more to come. What we want to do is just stay focused on what are the things that are unclear, and how do we help bring that clarity.
Fantastic. We've come to the end of our time, Mike. Thank you so much for the time that you've given us. If there's anything that you'd like to throw out, any events or anything that you would like to bring up to our audience before we get off, the mic is yours, my friend.
The only thing I'll say is one of the most valuable cybersecurity conferences I've ever attended is the C2, the-C2 conference. It's sponsored by SE Labs over in London. Chatham House rules, 80 large cybersecurity companies willing to actually talk about the problems that they and their customers are seeing and how they're addressing them. Person-to-person conversations, not just death by PowerPoint, but more importantly, looking to grow and sustain that conference. If you're a cybersecurity provider and having a community of cybersecurity experts is important to you, they are looking for sponsors, but it's not sponsored content. It's not buy a speaking slot to pitch. It's help support a community. And Barlas, I know your background in community, the power of community. I've seen it at Apple. I've seen it at AWS. So if you're a cybersecurity company that's looking to foster and grow the cybersecurity community at large, please reach out to me. I'd love to get you connected to C2, and I'll be back next year. Like I said, it's the most valuable 2 days I've spent in a long time.
Wow. Great endorsement. All right, Mike, thank you very much. We love you. We'll have you back again.
Absolutely. Thanks, Barlas.
That's a wrap on this episode of The Art of Intelligence. The future of AI isn't being written in a lab somewhere. It's being written in conversations exactly like this one. I'm Barlas UJ. We'll be back with another story, another use case, another bold idea. Don't miss it.